Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Linn, and today we'll be taking a look at ATG webinar, Creative Cabinetry in a Click. I'll be your virtual host for today. We'll have a brief presentation, and then we'll follow it up with a short Q&A. And the chat window is open, so feel free to insert items into the chat, and we'll address them towards the end of the presentation. Okay, so this webinar is intended to highlight the CTC tool Casework Configurator. Casework Configurator is a tool that allows you to greatly reduce management of casework content. It comes with pre-created standardized casework families, which increase accuracy and reduce errors. So some common challenges that we all face with creating casework. Casework libraries take a lot of time to create. Out of the box and downloaded content tend to have a limited flexibility, and choosing between quality and detail versus size and performance. In addition, standard insertion points and placement tools are not optimal. So today, you will see how Casework Configurator addresses these items and more. So topics covered for today: instantly create fully configured cabinetry families, specify the cabinet access style and interior configuration, select a face panel and hardware specific to the project, and finally add parameters to the family to control size and finish of the final product. Okay, so the Casework Configurator is broken down into 8 easy to follow steps. The first step is to download the content. So when you first download the tool, it will include the functionality of the tool only. So one of the first things you'll want to do is download all of the pre-created content, which is just a bunch of Revit families in the .rfa format. You will only need to do this once, and then it'll save the content to your hard drive. So the next time you want to use Casework Configurator, the content will be ready to go, and you can skip directly to step 2. Step 2 is to select your main casework assembly. So this enables you to select the overall form of the casework you're going for, which will be one of the families you just downloaded in step 1. Step 3 is to select your interior configuration. Step 4 is to select your cabinet access style. Step 5 is to select cabinet face panel, and step 6 is to select cabinet pull hardware. So steps 3 through 6 are all fairly similar in the fact that you're ultimately selecting nested families that will be added into your main casework family selected in step 2. So these will also be downloaded from step 1. Okay, step 7 is to define the parameters. So next, to define the parameters of the file, things like size, thickness, and offsets. This will set the parameters for your initial casework family. So if you end up having similar pieces of casework somewhere else in your project, then you can use Casework Configurator again for those other ones, just as you did the first time. Or alternatively, you could simply duplicate the casework and adjust the type parameters, just as you would the traditional method of adding similar families with different sizes. And then step 8, the final step, is to finish, create the family with custom nested families. So in this final step, you will establish the naming standards or conventions for your family and insert it into your project. Okay, so let's start with the step 1, which is to download the content. And to do that, we're going to come over to this to the CTC content tab, and you can see here's the suite at the top. It comes with 3 tools. It comes with the Casework Suite Settings, Casework Admin, and Casework Configurator. So for this one, we're going to start with the Casework Configurator Admin. Now, when you open it, you can see it says Download Latest Content. Now, this will pop up every time until you tell it not to by just clicking that button that says, "Don't show me this every time." So in this case, we'll say OK to this notification, and we'll go to Download Content. Now, this will bring you directly to the internet, which has been pulled up on another screen. You select the version of Revit you're using, 2019 for me in this example. Now, in my case, I've already downloaded all the content, and so it's already in here. In fact, what you're looking at under main casework assemblies, these are all the families that have already been downloaded. So I'm sort of skipping to step 2 in this example, but for you, that initial step would be to download all the content, and then it'll be populated in your casework configurator. I do hear some background noises. If someone could mute themselves, if everyone could go ahead and mute themselves. Okay, so here we have the cabinet access style, the cabinet face panels, the cabinet pull hardware, and so forth. Okay, next we move to the main casework assembly. So if we come back into the casework configurator, here's the first step, and you can see right up here at the top bar, it says main casework assembly. And so these are all the RFA families that have been included in this category, which is, is the step 1 of choosing. So down here below, it says available options for the main casework assembly, 25 cabinet interior configurations, and 27 cabinet access styles. So if you select this main casework assembly of the base cabinet in this case, you have 25 different options for the interior configuration. Same thing here. On this one, you have 2 options and 26. So with each one, as you select the main casework assembly, you can always come down here and check what all can I, how can I customize this base casework assembly. We have a lot of them in here. We have a cabinet storage with apron, typical base cabinet, 3/4 turn option. We have a cabinet without base. Here we have a support leg. Now here you can see available options for main casework assembly, 0, interior configuration 0, right? Because we're not going to configure a support leg. We're not going to add hardware to it. Therefore, those indicate 0 in the upcoming steps. Okay, I still hear some background noises. So if everyone could go ahead and mute themselves, that would be great. Okay, we have several other families here. You can see we have several dedicated to library content. We have movable cabinet 2 carts, again, other content. And we have a wardrobe, double hanging shelf and pole, as well as a wardrobe shelf and pole as well. Okay, so once you do that, you are ready to move on to the next step, which would be your cabinet interior configuration. Okay, so that would be the next bar here below, and it brings you to the next category. Again, these are simply RFA families that you downloaded in step 1. So you'll come through and you'll select which one of these you want to add to your main casework assembly, and this will be a nested family within your main casework family. You could do gridded cubbies, you could do a range tray storage, you could do slide guides. This one's kind of neat, shelf with hooks. A teacher style, which is kind of a combination of several things, style 1. A teacher style 2, which is the same thing, but it's added the range tray storage, which is the vertical one. Towel rack, a lot of options here that you can add for the interior configuration of your casework. Okay, that brings us to the next step, which is the cabinet access style. Okay, so these are basically the doors on your family. You can see we have a lot of options here. We have the door 2 with split height. You have the door 4 with middle opening, double swing base door, all kinds of options. So you can come through and just decide whichever doors are applicable to your project and applicable to the exact casework that you're working at that time, and select it, which would take you to the next step, which is your cabinet face panel. So after you select your door, you can come here and you could do the traditional flush panel, or this is a flush panel with an offset edge. Flush panel with a bull nose. Here's a full glass panel with a bull nose. or full glass with a panel, or just glass, no frame at all. Okay, lots of options. So you would choose your panel here, which would take you to the next step, which is the cabinet pull hardware. Okay, you can see we have a decorative pull style 1, decorative pull style 2, decorative pull style 3, a knob pull, no pull, or wire pull. So these are all the ones that are downloaded initially with your content. So you're probably thinking, well, these are great. What if I wanted a different pull? Or what if I have my own product that I like to specify in products? You can use that, okay? So this is a starting point, and that's typical for all the families. I'll just use this as an example, though. So if you had a pull that you like to use that's not one of these, you could simply grab one of these and do a save as file and create your pull using that file. And the reason I would suggest that route is because all the parameters are already in place. And so you could just align those parameters accordingly. And we have other CTC tools that would help you with that effort as well. Okay. So that would bring us to the next step, which is parameters. So we can see the next item down here, parameters. So you can see in the gray bar, it's referencing which family. So up at the top, we have the main casework assembly. And these are all the parameters that are assigned to that family itself. So we have a cabinet box width. And when you select it, you can come over here and look at the image, which tells you what it's looking for. Okay. So the counter thickness, it's showing you that dimension there. That's the depth of the casework, the height of the casework, the panel thickness, the shelf thickness, and then the width. Okay, so it gives you a little preview of what that parameter is specifying. Okay, next we have the cabinet access style. So here, it's referencing this family, this nested family here, and it's giving a value. And so this is a hardware offset. So you can see that's the horizontal offset. So it's 2 inches from the center of that hardware. And then there's a vertical offset from the top of the door as well. Okay, so you can come in and choose those. You can select the defaults, or you can change them. You can put in whatever value you need. Now, again, when you come in and select these are the initial values. So you can save your casework down. If you want, you could accept all the defaults, knowing that you can go in and customize them and change those parameter values just like you would any family, just like a door or any casework or any family. Okay. So now we move on to the final step, which is to finish it. So this is where you come and name your family. So right at the top, we can see it says main assembly name. So in this one, we have a tall storage cabinet. And then it has the type name, which is indicated below that. So what it's doing here is taking that name of each family you've selected it and added it to the name. Cabinet access style is here. The face panel is here, and the hardware is here. Okay, so you can go and accept that default, or you can come in and you can name it anything you want. You could simply say kitchen casework if you want. You can make it as specific or as generic as you want. Okay, so that's just the default that it starts with. Okay, so that's the basic process. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example now. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the CTC tab and then up to the Casework Configurator tool. Okay, again, we're going to start with the main casework assembly. In this case, we'll just select a base cabinet, standard base cabinet. Now you can see you can either double click it or you can hit the next button, either way. Okay, so these are all of the hosted families that are allowed to be hosted within that base cabinet. Okay, so we selected our cabinet interior configuration. We'll select a cabinet access style. We'll select a panel. Let's see, we'll grab a full glass offset. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and select a decorative pull, this option 3. And for these, I'm just going to go ahead and accept the defaults. again, it shows you what it's referring to, that box width, the depth, the height, and so forth. Okay, that's all for the main casework assembly. Here are the offsets we talked about for the hardware. Now, in this case, a third section has been added, which is the cabinet face panel. Now, the reason this was added is because we have a glass insert. So you can see when you press on these values, it's showing you, where do you want this glass to sit in the panel? And how wide do you want the stiles on each side? Okay, come here. Again, here's the naming convention, which starts with the main casework assembly. And then it goes through and adds all the hosted families we chose to be in it to be included within the naming convention. And finally, you come through and you hit finish, which will go through and create the casework for you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and plop that down. I see some questions popping in. Those are good, but as mentioned, we'll go ahead and address those towards the end of the presentation. So let's take a look real quick at Casework Configurator options. So again, this is how the family was named. And you can see this is very similar to how you would work in a Revit schedule. You have available fields, and then you have selected parameters. So for this, we've selected the parameters, main casework assembly, cabinet interior configuration, and so forth. And down in the preview, that's what is indicated in the naming convention. So you can use this, or you can customize it if you want. Okay, you could select other available fields. You could select a custom field if you want. So we'll just say custom text 1, and you can see it's been added to the parameters. It's also been added to the preview below. So you can see custom text 1 has been added to the end of the name. If I select it, I can push it up and it's being moved to the beginning of the name now. Now this could be anything you want. It could be the name of your firm if you want, or it could be, the room that it's going in, or anything you want, however you want to customize that. Okay, so currently we're looking at this at 1/8 inch and coarse scale. So you can see when you adjust the scale, adjust it just as you would expect. The line weights are adjusted, the line styles are adjusted. And here in the coarse detail view, you get the dashed lines, you can see the doors, and then a couple lines, barely indicating hardware. So what if we switch that to medium? You can see now we can see the thickness of the shelf itself, and you get, solid lines for the hardware. Now let's take a look at fine. In this case, you can actually see some dimension in the hardware itself. Okay, let's take another look. We'll look at a 3-dimensional view. Again, we are at 1/8 inch coarse detail level. Okay, so that's our base drawing. There's no interior shelf, if you notice. Go to 3/4 inch. Again, this is coarse detail level. So if we bump it up to, let's say, medium, you can see it adds that shelf on the interior right here. That's been added at medium detail level. Okay, so let's jump to fine, and you can see the hardware went from model lines to extruded elements. Okay, so let's jump to the next step, which will be take a look at the base cabinet families. So as mentioned, this is a family in your project, and it works just like any other family you'd expect. So here's the main casework assembly, and below it are a bunch of other families. You can see they've been added. So what are these other ones that have been added? These are the nested families that are hosted within your main casework assembly. You can also see them over here in your project browser. So if you go to casework, there's the main family right here. And then here are the nested ones. Okay, if you can tab select, and you can see it'll grab that nested family on its own. You can grab that shelf. Again, I'm just hitting the tab button. You can grab the hardware. Yeah, so it works after you insert it into your project. It works very similar to every other, custom content you've ever built or inserted into your project. All right, now let's take a look at some of the parameters that have been incorporated into this. So if we grab it, just like any other family, you have instance parameters right here under your properties. It has a toe kick height. So if we change that a couple inches higher, you can see what happens. It raises that just like you would expect. Let's go ahead and bring that back down. Again, these are instance parameters, so they are affecting this family only. Okay, if we grab it, we have shelf thickness, which you can see in the middle. So if we increase that, you can see it's a thicker shelf now of 1.5 inches. So we'll go ahead and put that back to 3/4. Okay, we have some, we looked at these earlier. We have the hardware offsets. Now you can see where to put this hardware. It's not the best right now. It's kind of right on the edge of that door where the panels kind of overlap. Okay, it'd be better if that were scooted over, so no problem. I'm just going to come in and say hardware horizontal and give it an offset of less, like 2 inches. Okay, that looks a lot better. Let's take another look, maybe 2.5 inches. Okay, that's okay. I probably like 2 better, so let's put that back. Okay, same thing, we have the vertical hardware offset. So if we increase that to 8, it'll go down because that offset has been justified from the top of the panel. So a smaller number will push it up, a larger number will push it down. Okay, so we also have a counter thickness. So we determined we want the height of this casework to be 3 feet. So this counter thickness is actually pushing it down to, I guess, 210.5 to account for the thickness of the countertop itself. So if you were to change that, if we had a real thick countertop, maybe 4 inches, you could see it'll hold the 3 feet overall and push the casework below the countertop down. So we'll put that back to the traditional 1.5 inches, which brings that back up. Okay, just as you'd expect, we also have type parameters that have been added. So we can switch those and you can see what happens. So if we make that 3, we have a wider casework, 3 feet wide. The toe kick depth, 6 inches, okay. So that'll get deeper as you'd expect. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put these back to where they were. Change the panel thickness. Okay, so there's the overall height, which includes, so that's 210, if we wanted an accessible site approach, for example, we could adjust that and bring it down. And then, of course, the depth parameter as well. So if we wanted a deeper section, just modify that to 2.6, and we have a deeper piece of casework. Okay. It also added a few material, or a couple material and finish parameters. Now these are material type parameters. So you can come in and select whatever you want for the shelf material and the cabinet finish as well. Okay. Now, obviously, the correct way, if we were going to modify in these, as I'm sure you know, the correct way would be to go ahead and duplicate it so we're not affecting anything else in the model. So you can do that just like you would a door or any other casework that you have in your family. So come in, you can duplicate it, give it another name. We'll call this one wide. You could probably give it the dimension if you wanted. We'll say 3 feet, okay. So now we have a couple pieces of casework, right? And you can see, come over here, We have both a wide and a standard version. Now, when it came to naming this, we could have went ahead and added from the available fields, we could have added height and width if we wanted to have those as part of the name. Probably a good idea. Okay, there's a few more instance parameters that we kind of rushed over the first time, so let's take a look at those. You can add locks, so you can say side lock 1, side lock 2. You can toggle those on, both or one at a time, either way. Okay, we also have clearance, which is a nice aspect, especially when you're in the schematic phase and you're trying to work out circulation through your workroom or whatever it is that has the casework. You can see it shows up both in plan and in 3D. And again, that is an instance property, so you can toggle them on or off as you see fit. Okay, now this is a nested family. Now you can see they also have their own parameters, but they are being driven by constraints of the main assembly casework. So you can't adjust them here because they're being locked to constraints of the main one. Okay, now let's take a look at some of the views that we have with our casework. Okay, so we've seen the plan, we've seen the 3D. Let's come back down here. Let's take a look at the elevation. So if we zoom in, it looks like casework, obviously. Now, again, we're an 1/8" course. So let's switch that to 3/4, which, as you would expect, would adjust the line work. If we go to medium, you can see now it starts to show the interior shelving dashed in. And then finally, if we go to detail level, it'll show some thickness to your hardware. All right, so let's jump back to the plan again. And this time, let's go ahead and cut a section through the millwork. Okay, so it has everything we'd expect. It has the edging we specified on the door itself. It's got the hardware we specified. It's got the thickness of the casework itself. Now, this did not include the countertop, as you know, so that's been left off. So you can come back and add that as its own family, or extrude, and however you do that. All right, let's do another quick example of an upper cabinet creation. Okay, so same process. We'll go back to the Casework Configurator. We'll go to tall cabinet hutch. We'll select this range tray storage, which is the vertical oriented ones. We'll grab a double swing tall door. And we'll grab, let's see, this panel. We'll do knobs. We'll go ahead and accept the defaults here. And we'll go ahead and accept the defaults here as well. Okay, now you can see it has created the upper, and you can see this is also hosted to the level. So it's not wall hosted. You don't have to have a wall in place first. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Let's bump the scale up to 3/4 inch. If we go to medium, you can start to see, and then fine, ultimately you can kind of see the hardware start to take shape. Again, this is let's see, 3/4 inch. Take a look at fine. Now you can see those knobs more clearly. You can see the shelves in there, the vertical shelves right there. So for this example, I'm going to create a 3D section. And I'm going to pull it down so we can start to see what's inside here. So now you can clearly see the vertical oriented shelving that we've added. Now I selected that independently. I just used tab select, and you can see right here, So that family is indicating what's the divider count of that nested family. Now this, as you know, this is a type parameter, so it would affect all of them, but you can change them here. Okay, you can say 7 and actually if I were to do this in a real project, I would probably duplicate these if I were changing them, have one called, range trace storage _5 or _3 or so forth. But for this example, I'll just switch the parameter real quick. Okay, let's go ahead and take a quick section look at this. As you'd expect, it has added the door. It's got a single line for the door pull. So if I switch that to fine, you can see that that pull has taken more shape. It's got all the parameters associated with it, and we're good to go. Okay, let's take a look at how we can customize some of the configuration. So I'm going to do another example, but I'll just do a quick one this time. Okay, I'm going to grab one where I don't have the options of all the nested families. So if you remember, some of them don't have nested family options, right? So you can see this one, it didn't have any. And because it didn't have any, it brought me right to the end. It skipped over the cabinet interior configuration. It skipped over at cabinet access style and face panel and so forth and brought me right to the end. So I'll go ahead and finish that. And it brings in the movable cabinet bookcase. Okay, so if I zoom in, I'm going to modify the detail level and scale real quick. Okay, so here's a three-dimensional view. Let's switch the scale and detail level again real quick. So if we take a look at our project browser, we can see that it added just one family because this one didn't have any nested families. So it's just the main casework assembly. Okay, now I'm going to go back into the casework configuration, or the casework admin. And I'm going to look at, okay, so here are all the RFA families, okay? And you can see it has them divided by tab. This is the main casework assemblies, the cabinet interior configurations, and so forth. So if you grab just one of them, and then you come down and hit the configure button, here's where you control the defaults for that specific family. Okay, you have a family name, you have a type name, you have a description, a seed name, and then down here you have all of the default values for your parameters. Okay, again, you have default values for your geometry and the default dimensions for those. And so the yellow ones have already been configured, and the white ones you can either accept the default or you can configure them as well. You can select a preview image, okay? And this is for when you're going to use the Casework Configurator, you can have a little preview of what you're selecting. So it brings up this dialog. Come in and choose whatever image you want, okay? And then here's another one, compatible families. So this is kind of a big one. This is where you control what nested families are able to be nested within this family. So you can see we have the base cabinet main casework assembly family selected. And here's the cabinet interior configuration tab, and then the cabinet access style tab. So if it has a check mark beside it, that indicates these nested families. I am saying these are able to be nested within that family. You know, some of them don't apply, obviously. So the ones that don't apply don't have check marks. Okay, so these have been configured to the, the standard method, but you can always come in and reconfigure those as you see fit. So again, as mentioned previously, you can use your own custom families with this, but a good way to do it, you just have to make sure the parameters are aligning properly. So a good way to do it is do a save as, and again, you can use some other CTC tools to help with that effort. Okay, so that concludes the webinar, Creative Cabinetry in a Click, Casework Configurator. As you can see, this is an extremely powerful tool to produce highly accurate and detailed casework in minutes. So if anyone is interested in learning more about the Casework Configurator, we would welcome the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with you. So you can contact me or any of our sales consultants. So I did see, as mentioned, a few questions pop into the chat, so I'll address this really quick. Does it add a countertop? So no, the Casework Configurator does not have a countertop component, as you saw, but you can use the standard out-of-the-box ones, or you could do a simple extrusion and make it whatever thickness you want and put it right on top. Okay, okay, cabinet face panel seems to only contain different combinations of flush, glass, fronts. What about making cabinet front shaker style or fancier style face front? Okay, great question. So as indicated, these are the ones that come kind of stock with the product itself. You can customize and make new families and add them into the wizard, and then use those however you see fit. The key really is to make sure your parameters are, accurately aligned. Okay, final question. Is there the capability to produce shop drawings for each cabinet automatically? So the Casework Configurator does produce Revit families, just like you would if you were to go to out-of-the-box content and drag it in. That's what you get. You get an RFA family. So from that point forward, you would be doing shop drawings just as you would traditionally. Okay, let's see. We've had a few more questions pop in just now. Is this add-on feature an additional cost? I'm not sure which add-on feature you're talking to, but I would encourage you to go ahead and contact a sales consultant and we can talk costs with you. The suite does come all together. It's all included. One more question. Can you globally change door styles in a project? So yes, you can. And how you would do that is by making it you would switch out the nested family within that family, if that makes sense. And if you do it in a type parameter method, then it will in fact go ahead and change all of them. Okay, so these are good questions. Thank you for your time today. I hope it was beneficial to you. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you.